The time is now 6:36 p.m. It is March 1st, 2021, and we will be calling to order the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of Goose Creek Consolidated Independent School District. At this time on our agenda, I would like to call us to order and declare a quorum. Mr. Sampson, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Ms. Woods.
And was this meeting properly posted?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Now we will proceed to opening exercises.
Good evening, President Woods, school board members, Dr. O'Brien. We will begin the opening ceremonies with the prayer led by Board President Mrs. Woods. Please rise.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for your many blessings, and we ask for your guidance and wisdom as we meet tonight and work to make better the District of Goose Creek Consolidated Independent School District. Bless this meeting and all those affected by the decisions made here tonight. Give us strength, courage, and direction to lead the district for the betterment of our communities. Place your mantle of comfort and protection over us and bring peace to those of us in pain. Come into our hearts and minds so we may love one another and better serve your will. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, President Woods. Now the pledges will be led by Board Member Mr. Laredo.
Please join me in the pledge to our American flag and Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mr. Laredo. You may all be seated now. Now we will invite Dr. McCall, our Deputy Superintendent of Administrative Services, and he will present the Theater in Our Schools Month resolution.
Good evening, Madam President, School Board, and Dr. O'Brien. I have the distinct honor of recognizing theater education in our schools for the month of March with a resolution. As you know, our theater arts programs play an integral part of the work that is done on behalf of the Goose Creek Consolidated Independent School District, putting on productions for our community to be exposed to theater production and theater works. So I will read the resolution at this time. Whereas the American Allegiance for Theater and Education, the Educational Theater Association, and the International Thespian Society partner every year in March for Theater in Our Schools Month to raise awareness about the value of theater education and draw attention to the need for all students to have access to a quality theater program. And whereas theater is an integral part of arts education and the arts have been part of life from the very beginning and are an inseparable part of the human journey, describing, defining, and deepening the human experience and adding depth and dimension to the environment we live in. And whereas all students participating in arts education courses benefit from the skills and processes developed through the arts and apply those skills in a variety of disciplines and settings, no matter their intended career path. And whereas participating in theater contributes to students' development through heightened skills in listening, understanding human experiences, adapting to and respecting others' diverse ways of thinking, communicating effectively, analyzing nonverbal communication, reading, self-expression, imagination of humankind, creativity, and whereas theater helps develop self-confidence, boost self-reliance, and increase empathy and compassion towards oneself and others, and whereas as a creative outlet or as the beginning of steps towards a professional career, theater programs in Goose Creek Consolidated Independent School District shape the future of our young people. There are a variety of benefits that come from taking part in these programs for students of all backgrounds and professional and educational interests, including creative problem-solving skills, the ability to accomplish team goals, and many more. Now therefore, be it resolved that we, the Board of Trustees of Goose Creek Consolidated Independent School District, do hereby proclaim March 2021 as Theater in Our Schools Month, and hereby urge all citizens to celebrate theater programs and the students that participate in them as we work towards a better future for this important part of every student's education. This has been passed and approved this first day of March 2021, signed by all members of the GCCISD School Board. I would like to welcome our theater directors from all of our comprehensive high schools, as well as Gabriel Brock, who is a junior at Goose Creek Memorial, to be recognized and to also participate in a photo.
Thank you, theater students. And thank you, Dr. McCall. Now, I would like to invite Kendall David, our Director of Marketing, and Melissa Rebold, Chief Executive Officer of United Way for Greater Baytown and Chambers County area. They will recognize campuses with the most participation and highest contributions for the United Way fundraising campaign.
Good evening. Goose Creek has held a long-standing relationship with United Way of Greater Baytown area and Chambers County in its support of our students and their families. Here with me today is Melissa Rebold, the Chief Executive Officer of United Way Greater Baytown area and Chambers County. Thank you for your continued support. We are pleased that during a global pandemic, Goose Creek CISD employees raised a total of $57,278 to support United Way in its mission to help our community. This is the largest total raised in Goose Creek history. Today, we're going to honor a couple of our campuses for highest employee participation and highest monetary contributions. The first set of recognitions is for highest employee participation. Awarded with the third highest employee participation, Asheville Smith Elementary at 55%. The principal at Asheville Smith is Kay Cruz. United Way campaign coordinator is Rosalind Scott. Thank you, Ms. Cruz and Ms. Scott, for your contribution and hard work. Awarded with the second highest participation is Impact Early College High School at 74%. The principal and United Way coordinator of Impact is Laura Reyes. Thank you, Ms. Reyes, and stay close. Awarded at the highest employee participation is Point Alternative School at 86%. The principal of Point is Dr. Tricia Tynes. The United Way campaign coordinator is Jeanette West. Thank you. The next set of recognitions are highest monetary contributions of a small, medium, and large campus. Small campus category ranging from 1 employee to 69 employees. Impact Early College High School donating $3,840. Again, the principal and United Way campaign coordinator of Impact is Laura Reyes. Thank you, Ms. Reyes. Medium campus category ranging from 70 employees to 99 employees. Highlands Elementary donating $2,823. The principal of Highlands is Blanca Capetillo, and the coordinator is Michelle Stripling. And the large campus category ranging from 100 to 234 employees, the highest contributor was Lee High School donating $3,255. Principal Crespo and United Way campaign coordinator Connie Guerrero. Please join me in congratulating these campuses for their participation, hard work, and generosity to our community. We thank all of our Goose Creek facilities and campuses for contributing to United Way. Let's give them one last round of applause.
Amazing work. Thank you all. And thank you, Ms. David and Ms. Rebold. And with that, I will now turn the meeting back over to President Woods.
Thank you. Great to see all of our campuses actively supporting the United Way programs in our community. At this time, we'll move on the agenda to item number 4, which is citizens' participation. I believe we have 7 speakers signed up this evening. So at this time, I don't feel there is a need to modify the citizens' participation time frame. Citizens who have registered with the recording secretary may address the board on matters other than the character of any student, staff, or board member. Since the item addressed by the speaker may not have been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Law, board members may only listen to the individual statement and may not discuss the item with the patron or take action on any matter not on the posted agenda. Each individual heard shall be allotted 3 minutes for the presentation. And again, like I said, at this time, we have 7 speakers signed up for this evening. Our first speaker will be Kevin Craven. Mr. Sampson, our board secretary, will be providing the time for the speakers. Do we have Mr. Kevin Craven? Okay, and so Mr. Sampson will be providing the time for you, and he will let you, you'll have 3 minutes, and he will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining. Okay?
Thank you. People of color in this community have fought for decades against the racist symbols of the Confederacy at Robert E. Lee High School, even the name itself. In the early 70s, my grandfather was one of several members in the neighborhood in which I grew up who petitioned this board to address and rectify this issue. However, I am not here for a recitation of history. I am here to address the policy failure of this district. In 2016, Yale University convened the Committee to Establish Principles of Renaming, also known as the WIC Committee. Reference was made to this committee in the GCCISD committee presentation dated February 2nd, 2021. The WIC Committee, a panel of historians, provided the framework for renaming the residential college at Yale named after John C. Calhoun, a person who had pro-slavery views. In summary, the historian concluded that institutions can rename buildings and indeed have renamed buildings in order to better reflect their values without trying to suppress and/or erase history in the style of the old Soviet Union. They went even further to state that it can be relevant to revisit why a name was on the building in the first place. Many school districts have embraced and adopted the renaming principles adopted by the WIC Committee and have revised naming and renaming guidelines to include specific and actionable language in their renaming policies so as to demonstrate a core belief and core values. Goose Creek is not one of those districts. In fact, this policy found in CW Local has not been revised since 2012. The one-page document offers vague language such as the board may take steps to rename a district facility versus language such as the board shall take steps to rename a district facility to better reflect its core values. It sets forth no guidance that a person whose name appears on a district facility must be an individual of exemplary character or one who is widely respected. Clearly, the GCCISD policy lacks teeth. The policy examples I've stated are just a few of the districts within the state. Poor policy ultimately allowed this board to vote on a deferment of its responsibilities and punt them to a committee marred in controversy. You should have known better than to convene a committee of individuals who were obviously at great odds with each other. The hostilities that exist within the group are well known. Social media has validated them. In the absence of refined or sound sensibilities, sound policy must become important. This is not a majority win contest. You are charged with serving in the best interest of the minority constituency as well, and stop looking the other way.
Thank you, Mr. Craven. Next speaker for public participation will be Susan Cummings. Ms. Cummings, you will have 3 minutes, and Mr. Sampson will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. I'm Susan Cummings, a lifelong resident of Baytown and a product of GCCISD schools. I call on the school board to reject the findings of the Facility Names Committee as corrupted and therefore invalid. Trustees and Superintendent Randy O'Brien have failed the test of leadership by abdicating their responsibilities and shifting it to the shoulders of a committee that could never function under the burden of secrecy rules and threats from the public. That you could not muster the moral courage to make this decision on your own speaks volumes. I'll name but a few of the structural and moral failures that require that the findings of the committee be rejected. First, the creation of a 45-member committee is the equivalent of throwing the issues at hand to a mob. The number of members and the lack of professional, disinterested guidance throughout the entire process led to committee work based on simple numbers rather than the complex context of racism and history. Second, even the most jaded among us can see that having the wife of a school board member sit on this committee as a conflict of interest, if you can't see that, you're blind. Third, the lack of transparency and accountability regarding the committee's work boggles the mind and is a disservice to all. That we have leaders who don't understand that open meetings and open record laws of our state is troubling. How can district constituents have faith in a process that relied on incomplete access to committee discussions and access? Instead, district leadership expected us to accept edited and manipulated audio and video transcripts. Putting a non-enforceable gag order on the committee signaled that you really don't care, that you really don't believe the public has the right to know the machinations of decision-making. What's more, both the superintendent and the chair of the committee broke the non-disclosure agreement on social media, yet want to blame the debacle on those who were the subject of threats. Fourth, the administration's disregard of the persecution of some of the committee members is unacceptable. Instead of dealing with the perpetrators who proudly attempted to threaten the jobs of these committee members, you ignored them, deciding to shroud the committee in secrecy. Those threats alone should have indicated to you the deep-seated animosity directed at those who wanted to advance the discussion. Clever administrators would have dealt with those personal threats and would have been able to preserve the transparency for the public. Your inability and unwillingness to recognize the hard work of reconciliation is damning. You shoved off this work on your constituents, hiding behind the facade of community choice and majority rule,
3 minutes.
as if this were a high school prom committee. This is a moral question that you have failed.
Your time
Reject
has
the committee's
expired, Ms.
report.
Cummings.
Thank you.
Next on the speaker list is Dr. Victoria Morone.
Good evening, Dr. O'Brien, board members, and attendees. I'd like to begin by asking everyone to just take a deep breath for a minute. I only have 3 minutes, so I'm not going to breathe, but you can. I've grown up in Baytown my whole life, went to Goose Creek schools, like many of you here, graduated from Sterling and Lee College. I've witnessed and have been a victim of microaggressions, deficit mind teachers, and other racist behaviors in various personal and professional settings in and outside of Baytown. I came back to professionally work in Baytown 11 years ago because I want better for this community than what I experienced growing up here. I've dedicated my life's work modeling what's possible to go from Section 8 to a doctorate degree. An environment like that has to be fostered in a loving community, a community that does not blame others and hold superior white supremacist values over their heads to the point that if you're in opposition of my views, then what you're saying is completely inaccurate. A loving community does not attack and go after another's livelihood, as what was done to mine. A loving community is mindful, and throughout history, generations of families have been hurt both physically and emotionally by things like racism. And I understand that this word and equity is not understood. It's not comfortable for some people, but it is reality. You all are leaders in this community. You have the ability to lead by your decisions and to bring anti-racist practices into this district. We need to stand together and elevate this community to love, not to hate. Last year, when this conversation was taking place, and to date, the hatred and behaviors of many members of the Say the Name group have been incredibly disturbing. All of that behavior is a result of discomfort and change rooted in structural racism, power, dominant identity, and privilege, no matter how you look at it. Some alum of Lee feel that changing the name is a loss of tradition, like that of a family name when mostly women, when you get married, 1 minute, thank you, you adopt the name of your spouse, right? And so there's a loss partially of some tradition there. Robin DiAngelo states the key to moving forward is what we do with our discomfort. Whatever you all decide after this report will set much precedent and will leave some community members feeling a sense of brokenness no matter what you decide. And I feel for you. Even though only 3% of the community participated in this survey, you will make your decisions as you wish. I just ask you to please consider your own social positionality and how it informs your perspectives and reactions. Changing the name of Lee is not a trending cancel culture or desire to erase history plea. This has been asked of Goose Creek for decades. Public speaking, like now, can leave people uncomfortable. But is avoiding discomfort, seeking to elude conflict, and wanting to be liked more important than standing against threats and the negative acts we witnessed? Is avoiding discomfort and not taking a stand against memorializing individuals in history that represent racial inequality? What do you want the legacy of Baytown to be known as? When you consider the whole child, whose child are you considering? Thank you.
Thank you. And next on our speaker list is Sarah Graham. Yes, ma'am. And you will have 3 minutes, and Mr. Sampson will alert you when 1 minute is remaining.
Hi, how are y'all doing? I just wanted to say that I thank you to the trustees for actually giving me the opportunity to participate on the renaming committee. After this process, I truly believe it was the best platform for vested community members to research and develop a recommendation that the trustees can trust and rely upon to be factual, data-based, and well thought out. Although there were many challenging conversations with responses that I many times did not agree with, to witness the dedication of so many local people working hard for their community. As an employee of this district at Lee High School, I have faced myself criticism and gossip that have also impacted my personal and work life, while seeking to gather data for what decision is best for our entire town, the past, the present, and the future. Even with backlash, I actually supported transparency when other people on the committee, in that committee room, and actually in this room tonight, did not want the transparency. Knowing I was a current employee, that was a really hard position to take, and I spoke about it often, which you will hear after the Attorney General has you release the tapes. I encourage you all to take the valid data sets serious when you're making your decisions moving forward. Many people put a lot of time and energy into this committee for the recommendation to be thrown out or to at least not be taken seriously. I also want to say that the one thing that you're going to see in the book that stuck out the most for me as a lifelong educator is I was almost teary-eyed at noticing that several data sets that you're going to look at, and honestly, when it comes down to the name, it doesn't matter. They all wanted or all thought that the staff and the support were the most important thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. Speaker number 5 for the evening is Valeria Tijerina Gill.
Hello. First and foremost, I want to say I was reminded that as a committee member, we cannot discuss what went on during the committee, so I would like to take this time to declare my formal resignation from the committee. With that being said, I want to address the board about what will be done about the disgusting racist comments by various members of the committee. At this point, we're all aware about what Ms. Brenda Clem said, but this isn't just about one person, because racism is not just one person, it's various people. My question is, why were things allowed to get this bad to begin with? Since the beginning, I was the youngest member on the committee. I was 19 years old, I'm 20 now. I graduated Lee 2019 alumni, and whenever I introduced myself and said that my parents were immigrants, I was met with another committee member saying that she came here the right way, and nobody said anything. And that's fine, whatever. I've faced that before. But then after talking about my experience with racism, specifically at Lee, I was told I was being ridiculous and that I shouldn't let names define me and that they didn't know what I was talking about because they didn't experience it when they went to Lee. Belittling my experience and making it seem as if it did not exist and I was making it up because it didn't happen to them. These same microaggressions are still in school today. We had teachers who would talk about slavery and look at the 2 or 3 black kids in the classroom as if it was a joke. And they would look at them and the the kids would say that that made them uncomfortable. Why are you looking at the only 2 Black kids in that room while talking about a serious historical event and making light of it? But it was never addressed. Nobody cared. Everybody thought that it was just a joke. It's funny, whatever. And that's what leads us to what the comments were made about how if Blacks don't want to be victims, then they should stop being criminals and stuff like that. It's getting bad, and nobody talks about it. We like to pride ourselves on developing the whole student, but we can't do that while we have some teachers beating down the same kids that you're trying to develop. And I also want to ask the question as to why was a board member's wife allowed on the committee to begin with as an at-large, and what qualified her over the various people that applied? And why nobody thought that that would be a conflict of interest, seeing to that there was a board member making the decision, and then his wife was there trying to tell people what the decision should be. Granted, the board is going to vote the way that they want to vote no matter what, but it is still not right, and it is an unprofessional thing to have just because they share the same views. Thank you.
3 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. Speaker number 6 on our list tonight is Drake Collins.
Good afternoon. I'd like to speak about the accessibility of these board meetings. You guys were setting up WebEx pretty consistently up until the point that you weren't. And I don't think it's an unfair statement to say that the people that are here, that have shown themselves dedicated enough to drive here, make time in their day to be here, are any less dedicated than the parents who have so much to juggle at home and care just as much as the people here care about their kids and their community. And just because of conflicts of interest and because of conflicts of time, scheduling and everything, they can't be as present as they'd like to be. And I feel like there are so many things that this district does that penalizes parents who care about their kids and their community without meaning to. And when those issues are brought up, many are swept under the rug or thrown into a committee to have the community fend for itself, to defend itself and fend for itself, while the board and certain parts of the administration are allowed to, I guess, supervise. I know that the recent committee put in place is a prime example of that, and I feel the lack of ability for people to be able to keep up and understand what it is that goes on in these meetings day to day is a travesty, on top of many other things. Why is it not so simple to just do a live stream on a YouTube channel? That's the most cost-efficient option, but we don't even have that. I know WebEx might be a little pricey, but when we talk about taxpayer dollars being spent this way or that way, this doesn't seem like the worst investment to make. Not even a transcript. Baytown is what now? Almost half Hispanic or Latino? Not even mentioning the individuals who speak Tagalog or, Vietnamese or, mainland Chinese. And I understand that it might not be easy to get translators to come in and do that, but Spanish at the very least. And with the audio quality, it's as simple as getting some towels from the dollar store and a little bit of wood from Home Depot or Lowe's, whatever your preference is, and putting up some soundproofing in here. The audio, Ye can tell you right over there, it is awful, awful, awful. And then if you want to say, well, we have audio recordings after the fact, those are awful too. How can anyone, and I've been speaking English, 20 years now? And it's hard to keep up with some of that. So even doing unofficial transcripts is a task. And a lot of people, time?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Our next speaker on the list is Marga Matthews. And just a reminder, Ms. Matthews, you will have 3 minutes to speak, and Mr. Sampson will alert you when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening. Just wanted to state that I want to thank you first for allowing a committee to be formed. It was very interesting and a learning experience, which I truly enjoyed. Yes, there were some issues, but in the long run, I came to understand that we were a team, all for the good of our community. As for rules for the purpose of the committee, per the school board, the district will form a committee to research and discuss district facility names. This committee will investigate the implications of naming a school facility. This committee will address key questions regarding facility names. And it was very interesting because we had a lot of surveys, and in these surveys, but first when we started, we all signed a form to not speak to media or others, but yet some committee members were not abiding to the rules, and a lot of accusations were hearsay and not actual truth and taken out of context. And people that were at the committee were only 35 most of the time, when it should have been 42, because of some committee members failed to take it seriously. I feel we are rehashing the issues that have already been surveyed and discussed through the committee. This committee is tasked with reviewing data and improving input for the school board concerning potential facility names. After all the surveys, we came up with the Goose Creek Board of Trustees informed the committee to evaluate if the committee feels like there's a need to change names of the facilities and what the impact would be on our students. As part of this process, our committee surveyed 3 distinct groups: the community, the district staff, and the students. I'm here to speak about the data. Survey results show that our citizens, staff, and students do not want facility name changes, and the numbers are overwhelming. 71% of the community, 61% of staff, and 52% of the students
1 minute.
were asked, and they did not want a name change. I want to thank you for letting us come and become a committee and to discuss these issues, because it was very important for the community, and I just want to thank y'all again for y'all support in this. And I hope y'all and pray that y'all make the right decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. That concludes our citizens' participation portion of the agenda for this evening. So we will move on to agenda item number 5, approval of minutes. We have minutes from February 19th, 2021 regular board meeting to review. Do I have a motion on these minutes?
I'll move to approve.
A second.
So I have a motion from Ms. Guy and a second from Mr. Poppy to approve the February 19th, 2021 regular meeting minutes as presented. Any questions or comments at this time? Please raise your hand if you would like to approve these minutes. Anyone opposed? None abstaining. Motion passes 7-0. Number 6 on the agenda, discussion items. I will now turn it over to Dr. O'Brien for superintendent reports.
Good evening, Madam President Woods. We have our first superintendent's report will be coming from Student Services. Ms. Araceli de la Cruz.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I really do appreciate it. I don't know if you can hear me or not. Apparently not. Thank you. I'd like to take the opportunity to share with you about some of the great things that we have going on in student services. With, unfortunately, the pandemic, we do have some areas of concern that we're working daily to address. And so I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of what was going on and kind of keep a good pulse on what our students are dealing with. Some of the areas that student services covers is district enrollment, truancy, the McKinney-Vento program, which is the program for our homeless students, foster care, teens, health services, and discipline. We have 2 district-wide events that we usually do. Unfortunately, we were not able to do them because of the pandemic this last spring, but on any given year, we do a spring roundup, a summer roundup, and that's a 3-day event that we broadcast, and we have one late evening. It's a one-stop shopping, we feel like, for the parents, and that they're given the opportunity to get their children immunized. We have transportation department on site, the special education department on site, as well as the 504. Migrant programs, we ask all of them to be part of that process versus sending parents to different locations. We also provide support throughout the year for individuals that may have guardianship or custodial issues. If they need help with proof of residence, valid IDs, or transfers. Right now, we're in the process of granting and communicating with the parents regarding the rezoning for EF Green. We've already started sending some of those letters out. The truancy department covers McKinney-Vento, foster care. To date, they've had over 743 referrals. They've made over 19,000 points of contact, obtained over 292 verifications of enrollment, and this was before the capture date, which was in October. We're very fortunate to have a young lady that's helping us by the name of Ms. Hemsel. So at the beginning of August, I went to Mr. Chapa. I said, I think we're going to need help. Some of these kids that are doing virtual instruction are going to need additional assistance. So I'd like the opportunity to bring in more support for those families that have to be virtual for whatever reason, but need additional support. And this young lady has right now about 88 students on her caseload. So if I'm on virtual instruction and I need additional support, then we provide the support they need, whichever support or area that may look like. It's very specific to the individual students. The foster department is also encompassed in that area. We have foster students who receive support in transitioning to GCCISD and obtaining documents before they age out of foster care. So some of you may or may not know, when students age out, it's our responsibility, along with the CPS caseworker, to provide those students a copy of the documents they need, something simple like their birth certificate, their social security card. So when they do age out of CPS, they have the resources and documents they need to venture out on their own. We've also been very fortunate to work with the Goose Creek Police Department and have an officer go out to those home visits. This is an incredibly stressful time, and unfortunately, not all parents are eager to see Goose Creek CCISD on their front step. And so we've had some aggression that has been displayed by parents, and luckily we have an officer, Officer Dowdy, that's been able to assist the truancy department with those visits. Know that we anticipate our homeless numbers going up. We're in the process of verifying 2 different apartment complexes in this area that still do not have water. And so we're in the process in the next couple of days in verifying and confirming that, so we can identify who those families are and the resources that they will need moving forward. To date, we have approximately 160 McKinney-Vento students. 130 of those students are doubled up because of financial hardship. And that was prior to Snowvid, or whatever people want to call it. So I anticipate those numbers going up and that need getting greater in this area. Our PEAMS department consists of 3 individuals. They provide staff development to all PEAMS clerks for the 28 campuses. We went from reporting PEAMS 4 times a year to 28 submissions a year. And so those needs and requirements are growing. The PEAMS department also processes the audits. Anytime we have a special ed audit, bilingual audit, any kind of sometimes fiscal audit, then they can pull the PEAMS data as needed. And like I said, we have 3 employees, 2 full-time and then 1 split position. Health services. This I really want to commend you as a board and our superintendent, because whether you know this or not, registered nurses are not required at schoolhouses. And we're one of the few school districts in the state of Texas that has registered nurses employed at their campuses. So kudos to you, and thank you for giving us that opportunity. That was incredibly helpful when the pandemic hit. I can't stress enough, parents had a lot of questions, staff had a lot of questions, and who better to answer those questions than registered nurses? We also have a health coordinator who many of you know and we all love, Nurse Pena, who has been a tremendous support at this time. We work with medically fragile students who are 504 or special ed. Prior to the pandemic, I said you may or may not know this, we offered at least 5 different opportunities for students to receive their immunizations, and often for adults to receive their flu shots.
I believe that's 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Just kidding.
I was like, oh my God. Okay, I'm done. So,
Pay him
Go
to
ahead,
cut
Ms.
you off so
Delacruz.
you wouldn't win.
I'm a lot more long-winded than that, I assure you.
Yeah, right.
So we did provide immunizations and flu shots through our community. We partnered with the Rotary for Shots for Tots early August, and we look forward to doing those partnerships again. Some of the things that the health department, the health services has done is student assessment, contact tracing. We've worked with local and state health agencies and just communicated both with administrators and parents. The questions are endless. As you can only, I'm sure you as board members have been faced with some of those questions. And it's an ever-changing book and that it changes on a day-to-day basis. But because we have trained certified individuals, it makes the process a lot easier. And discipline. Often people think that that's all student services encompasses is discipline, but as you see, we do several other stuff. So some of the things that we do is we provide campuses with discipline data and behavior support data. We identify and provide interventions that are age appropriate. A lot of times we will have pre-K or K that's exhibiting concerning behavior, but in reality, it's age appropriate behavior that we just need to manage. We collaborate with 3 out-of-district alternative schools. Fortis is through Harris County Department of Education. High Point is through Harris County Department of Education, and then JJAEP. Now, Fortis is an outpatient facility, high school really, for students who need help, high school students. So if I'm a 9th grader and I come to the assistant principal or the counselor and I say, you know, I've been caught twice a year since I've been in 6th grade using or consuming or selling drugs, I need help. I need help to stop. So we bring in the Fortis staff, they meet with the parent and the student, and they do an evaluation. If the student chooses to get rehabilitation, then they are given the opportunity to go to Fortis. And then High Point is for our more severe behaviors. Any sexual or violent offenders that we have are sent to High Point. And of course, JJAP is for our expulsions. And those are usually our guns on campus or more serious drugs like cocaine or pills will usually go to JJAP. We also oversee the BEST program. Now, the BEST program was created as a result of the legislature coming back about 2 years ago saying we are no longer going to suspend first grade and 2nd grade students. So we had to provide appropriate interventions, and we created that program. A lot of kids that come to us often have never sat in a chair, in a desk, held a pencil, and so they struggle with those behaviors. So after the campus uses all the interventions that they can use or they know to use, we staff on the individual student and their needs, and then as a committee make the recommendation on whether or not BEST is the best option for them. And then our department oversees all the discipline hearings as well. I'm very fortunate and blessed to have Ms. Kim Barnes, who's the coordinator. I think she is in the back. And Nurse Pena will wave as well. And then the individual that is really the brains of the department, she's homegrown. And I want to give her a shout out because she just recently finished her bachelor's, and that's Ms. Stella Gonzalez. She's our department secretary. Like I said, she is the brains and the beauty in the department, definitely. So I'm very grateful to have her. Some of the other things that we do are the parent fair. Every October, we host a parent fair. We have about anywhere from 300 to 400 parents that come through there. And we provide immunizations, flu shots. We partner with about 60 different vendors, and I'll show you some pictures in a minute. The year before the pandemic, we partnered with a local agency, and we were able to hand out food to 160 families. So that we were very fortunate to have that. We processed and put together the student handbook. We deal with all community flyers and vendors. And we also provide DACA records. Shortly after this last election and the opportunity became open for students to apply for DACA again, we had a stampede of parents and students wanting their records so they could go ahead and apply for this opportunity. We oversee the drug testing for all the high schools. We provide staff development for the new teacher orientation and behavior 101. And one of my favorite things is we do Toys for Tots out of student services. We pair up with one of the local churches and we hit the different campuses really hard and this building really hard for toys. All the toys are distributed to local families. It's grown a lot. You'll see here in a little bit. We first started, it was just us and the church. Then the credit union came knocking and said, can we please help? We said, absolutely. This last year, they had one of the car dealerships across the street say, can we help too? Absolutely, the more the merrier. Walmart's one of our partners as well. And so they were able, on December the 19th, they were able to pass out not only toys, but food to all the individuals that had signed up. And then last but not least, Shots for Tots with the Rotary. That's another one of our partners. And the fun stuff is, this is our one of our enrollments in the summer. We open the doors probably at about, give or take, about 8:30, depending on what we have. And by the time we open, this is the long line that we have. And we get them in as soon as possible, as many people in. And like I said, within that time frame, we process about 300 families. And they're very eager. They, we often joke that we don't get a parent and a child. We get a parent, a child, a grandma, an aunt, and it's an exciting event for them, and we want it to be exciting. And so, once again, this is Ms. Barnes' idea. I can't take credit for it. She's a creative one in the department. So it was her idea to make sure that the students were looking forward to it. Now, remember, they're showing up here, seeing a bunch of scary people in a big building, and then sometimes they get a shot. Every now and then we'll have a runner, and we'll have to chase them down, but overall, we want it to be a really good experience for them. And so you can tell by this young man's face, he's not really sure what's going on, but he's going to take a picture with his mama. Once again, this is Ms. Barnes. During our parent fair, we're having difficulty getting all those kids together at Sterling High School, so she came up with the idea of story time. And we have a costume contest. So she really got into the spirit of the costume contest. And the costume contest is for infants. We have our winner from the previous year, who was a hot dog. We have toddlers. And then we also invite the other departments. This was a migrant department that came in and decided to do some different activities with the children, hands-on activities. Bilingual department comes, we have the special ed department come, the student nutrition department comes, and they pass out samples, and that's always a big hit. And you can see towards the back, we have, like I said, about 60 or 70 vendors. This was Harris County Department of Ed, and everyone's waiting around for that wonderful costume contest that we have, because we give out prizes that have been donated by the local vendors. And so last time we had this before the pandemic, each infant walked away with a stuffed animal. The toddlers won gift cards to some of the local restaurants, and then the older kids got gift cards to the local stores. And so that was another one of our vendors that we had. And each vendor, as you can see, provides candy. The families go to each table to trick or treat. And this was Toys for Tots this year. This was the previous year when you can see that the Gulf Coast Educators Credit Community Union partnered up with us. And look how much it grew to this year. And this is just a small set of toys that was donated from the campuses, community partners. So we're very, very fortunate to have such great and caring people. But I tell you, when it comes to student services, we would not be able to do what we do with and for the community if it wasn't the support of Dr. O'Brien and his executive council. And that's a reflection of you guys and who you approved to hire. So genuine thank you for allowing us to serve the students and the community of Goose Creek CCISD.
Thank you, Ms. Dela Cruz. Any questions from the Board of Trustees?
Yeah, I got one. On the apartments, how many kids that are still without water in those in the apartments you say you went to?
Well, at this point, we have 2 apartments. We just got notice of another apartment today in the leaf feeder pattern, and then we have one that we suspect in the Sterling pattern. Once we confirm them, that the addresses and I'll tell you that the managers of the facilities are real tight-lipped. They're not willing to share a lot of information. We know that porta potties have been brought in for some type of water and needs, but they do not have running water in the apartments. And it would be hard for me to tell you the number of families until I'm able to confirm the 2 complexes that we have in our attendance zone.
And I do also know that Dr. McCall is working with the city of Baytown in considering what other ways we can support those residents of those complexes.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about drinking water.
That's been delivered, as she said. Pallets of drinking water have been delivered.
They're delivering water in porta potties. They're just not able to cook in their apartments or bathe in their apartments.
Ms. De La Cruz, I have a question in regards to water. Do we have, as far as like our schools themselves, what options do our kids have for drinking water, especially since the pandemic?
Well, we have water on all of our facilities, and we usually have bottled water available as well as needed.
So
I was just going to say there is a backlog. Dr. Price, is one of the things in the chief operating officer's purview is to ensure that there's bottled water on every campus. I think he works through food services to have a backstock of water for such things as these emergencies and things of that nature.
So no, but I mean like every day, if a kid goes to school and he gets thirsty, usually they get out of the water fountain. Because of COVID, are kids able just to grab a bottle of water somewhere?
If they're asked, a teacher or a nurse or one of the administrators, a bottle of water will be provided to them. Yes, sir. Usually we keep at least 1 bottle of water per student at every campus, regardless of the pandemic.
And it's free of charge?
Yes, sir. Oh,
okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Questions? And once again, I want to recognize the ladies who are here with our department who are heaven sent. I would not be able to do or lead without them. So thank you very much to them. I do appreciate them greatly.
Thank you, Ms. De La Cruz. Appreciate you. Would you like me to proceed? All right, Madam President, we have next up for our superintendent's report, we have the Facility Names Committee final report. We have presenting tonight Council Tony Resendez, along with Citizen Chairman Thomas Parent, along with our staff, Dr. McCall, Mr. Bollinger. As they make their way up to the front, I just wanted to make a few comments. The board created the committee to solicit feedback from a cross-section of our community regarding the district's campus naming and renaming procedures. The committee's report is for informational purposes only and does not constitute any official board action regarding the naming of schools. Hearing from the committee will allow us to go into the next phase of our decision-making with more information than we had this past summer. Before we hear from the chairperson, I would like to extend my personal gratitude to the committee for undertaking this project and working very hard to ensure the board has all necessary information in order to move forward with its decisions. With that, I'll turn it over to you to Mr. Parent, and I'll allow for you to continue on with introductions.
Thank you. Actually, we're going to have Mr. Bollinger and Dr. McCall open us up here. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. O'Brien. We are here to present the final report for the Facility Names Committee. We, on September 9th, I believe, that's the board meeting when the Goose Creek Board of Trustees voted to form a Facilities Names Committee for the purpose of investigating facility names and to review data, to have a discussion and provide feedback ultimately to the school board concerning their conversations, discussion, and findings. The committee met 5 times. The first meeting was on November 30th all the way through February 22nd. It took a lot of effort to make sure that we had what needed to be in place, especially during a pandemic, and meeting with a committee that has 42 members. Technology department was outstanding in helping us with the technology resources that we used. Individuals like Christy Leith and Susan Passmore and Kendall David and Angela Sanders, along with Carrie Pryor Newman, were there every time to make sure that we were able to facilitate the meeting effectively. And also we had maintenance and Baldo with the microphone. So we had a lot of support from the district that they gave up their evenings during this time, and it just helped the process move smoothly.
So just a few more objectives to cover. As we continued our work with the committee, Mr. Parent was nominated as the committee chairperson by his peers. And so that was an exercise that, of course, we facilitated, but as a member of the committee, they had the opportunity to vote and select Mr. Parent as their chair. And then also Mr. Resendez did join us to serve as the facilitator. He is an attorney with Walsh & Gallegos, and so he assumed the role of the Facilities Name Committee facilitator and has supported us through this. As Mr. Bollinger stated, we had a lot of moving hands to make this committee move forward. And in that process, we wanted to be sure that we provided you all with the information that's requested. The Facilities Names Committee was given specific outcomes, which we will take some time to talk about in the presentation, but I certainly want to be sure to thank the committee as well as the chairperson and the facilitator for making sure that the information presented to you tonight was specifically requested. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Parent. Oh, I'm sorry. It's okay.
And we just wanted to point out real quick that all school board members should have received a binder, and then in that binder, there's quite a bit of documentation there. But mainly, it's the final report behind the first tab. The second tab is the slides to this presentation, so you have a copy of that. We have meeting presentation slides that were also posted online. Survey data, which is part of the presentation, but we separated that out. Committee presentation slides and resources, and so you'll hear in a little bit in the last meeting, committee members made presentations for certain facilities or against certain facilities. So we've included those presentations and the scripts when we receive them. And then the last tab has additional resources that were used throughout the process.
All right, and I just want to piggyback on the additional research resources that's in the back of the binder. There's a lot of great information in this binder to help guide you in your decision-making process. One of our speakers this evening actually referenced one of the reports that's included here, which was the Yale report. The Yale report was introduced to the committee at our fourth meeting via a short 8-minute video from the Yale committee members, as well as every member was presented a copy of the Yale report. It's a great resource, and one of the things in the video, one of the members of the committee expressed that they had wished that a committee had been formed before Yale had made their preliminary decision, but he notes that humans are imperfect. And then another committee member notes that scholarship requires you to weigh these issues carefully. So I appreciate the school board allowing the community the opportunity to weigh these issues carefully and to give it some more thought and present you more facts, data, research, and input from the community. So we're going to get into our committee outcomes. We had 5 specific outcomes that the school board asked us to address in our committee charter. We're going to talk tonight about the pros and cons lists for renaming or not renaming a facility. We're going to talk about an estimate on the cost of changing facilities, including options and draft timelines for phasing in a new name. Proposed recommendations, if any, regarding future decisions about the facility naming process, parameters and policies. That's your board policy, CW local. We're going to talk about the proposed list of facilities that should or should not be considered for renaming and the proposed recommendation to the school board. So as we worked through this process, we started off with a lot of discussion amongst committee members. There were some guiding questions that helped facilitate the process and kind of generate the initial conversation that would lead to how we evaluated school names and the board policy. So one of those was our first outcome, developing a pros and cons list for renaming or not renaming a facility. At our second meeting, we generated the lists. We just had committee members throwing out ideas, what pros and cons. After the third meeting, we had an online survey that the committee members filled out, and we reviewed the results of the survey at the fourth meeting. The highest ranked pros for renaming a facility were inclusivity, progress, local historical achievements, and respect. The highest ranked cons against renaming a facility were the cost and use of funds, financial impact to families or boosters, perception that something is wrong, and loss of traditions. and all of the pros and cons are included in our final report.
Good evening, board members, superintendent. I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this process, and it's been a pleasure getting to meet many members of your community, your staff, and we're going to do the best we can to provide you the information tonight that shows the work that this committee did. And I was a part of the last two meetings, and I was able to work with your staff and Mr. Parent to get up to speed, and they were very gracious and very informative, and I appreciate that. So the next item regarding outcomes had to do with cost. If this board decides to make a change, if this community and you all decide to invest in changing a name, what is it going to cost you? So with the assistance of administration, more specifically the Director of Construction, he provided information to the committee with details in terms of what it might cost. And we're going to talk about at the elementary level, the middle school level, and at the high school level. And on the slide you can see for the estimated cost to rename an elementary school is it's an estimate, of course, $15,500 to $54,450. And what is that cost going to include? Well, it's going to include on the next bullet there, mural removal, marquees, floor logo replacement, interior exterior building graphics, and other miscellaneous things. So if this board did decide to change the name of an elementary school, this gives you an idea of what that might look like in terms of dollars. And I think that is practical information that as a board, you're responsible for the finances, so it's important to have an idea what that would look like. With regard to a junior high school, $63,500 to $130,000 per school. Now, obviously, that's more than the elementary school, but that's because there's additional costs involved with the junior high that you're using your name, your logo in a lot more different ways. And that's included on the second bullet. Gym wall graphics, scoreboard panel replacement, athletic uniforms, and fine art uniforms. Because the kids are more involved in other activities, there's going to be additional costs in changing those things potentially. I know some schools' uniforms don't have the name of the actual mascot or the school. It just depends. So you'd have to do that research, but that's an estimate. Now the high school, that's the big one. That's the one that can get expensive because it's a bigger building and more students and more opportunities to use the name. And that's $142,500 to $470,050. And that's per school, and that's, again, pretty wide estimate, but again, it depends on what specifically we're changing. And the additional things are turf field updates on the last bullet, additional athletic uniforms, and additional fine art uniforms, and those things can add up. So this gives just a framework for you all to think about if you all do decide to change a name, what it might cost. Now, obviously, your administration would give you more details once you cross that bridge, if you choose to do something like that. But this was one of the outcomes that the committee was charged with, and they did a good job of gathering that information, and I hope it's helpful to you all as you analyze the issues.
All right. Our third outcome was proposed recommendations or changes, if any, regarding future decisions about the facility naming process, parameters, and policy. This specifically relates to the local board policy, CW Local. At our first meeting, we had a review of CW Local. We also revisited that at the fourth meeting. The committee reviewed various naming parameters and processes from other school board policies throughout Texas and beyond. There were several other states that have gone through renamings. We evaluated quite a few of those. The committee identified which policies should be recommended to the school board to consider. Committee members voted on each criteria, and in outcome number 5, which is our recommendations to the board, we are going to go through the voting percentages and identify which items we're recommending to include in the board policy and what changes we would recommend. Outcome number 4 is our proposed list of facilities that should or should not be considered for renaming. So after our fourth committee meeting, we provided members with an online survey, and we asked them to identify which facilities they believed should be considered for further discussion regarding potential renaming recommendations from the committee. We set a threshold of 4 members having to select a facility for further discussion, just to ensure that there was reasonable consensus that there should be more discussion and that we should allocate committee time to discussing those items. We asked that the committee members that had marked an item for more discussion be prepared to speak to the committee with their justification why they felt like that facility should be renamed. We allowed them to mark what level of participation they would like to participate, whether they want to be a spokesperson for that particular facility, participate in a group, provide written feedback, or they just wanted to cast their opinion on that. So that through that process, we identified 11 of the district's facilities that the committee felt warranted further discussion during our 5th meeting. So those facilities are or were San Jacinto and Banuelos Elementary. They received 4 committee member votes, and in this case, votes were just votes to continue discussing those facilities. It wasn't a vote to rename that facility. There were no committee members that volunteered to be a spokesperson, and we received no written feedback for either of those facilities. Alamo Elementary received 4 votes. Bowie, Crockett, and Travis received 6 votes. Austin Elementary and Asheville Smith received 7 votes. There were presentations given for and against the renaming of those 6 facilities at the 5th committee meeting. The Green Center also, it received 10 votes. There was presentation given for renaming that facility, but no presentation against renaming the facility. Sterling High School received 11 votes to continue discussion. There were presentations given for and against the renaming of the facility during the 5th meeting. Lee High School received 18 votes and received presentations for and against the renaming of the facility. There were 18 committee members that selected no to renaming most or all facilities. And one thing I would like to note here is that when we asked committee members to make these decisions about what facilities they wanted to consider further, we had already gone through the recommendations on what we were recommending for board policy, and we had gone through items like the Yale report, and we had all of the committee discussions up to that point, and we asked them to view these facilities through the lens of what they had learned through the committee process up to that point and the recommendations that we were making.
Okay, so the next part we're going to talk about has to do with, well, the survey. The committee was given additional information for their consideration to see what 3 particular groups, what their thinking was, and it's just a snapshot of those groups. You'll see the numbers. Your community, your staff, and your high school students. And the idea was, let's see what they're thinking, get some feedback from them, use that information as part of the whole process. Here are the results. Oh, and they did the survey, they gave that survey out through the website, through social media, and through your school email program, School Messenger. And at this point, as we know, a lot of talk in the community out there, you guys have been dealing with this. So we believe that the word had gotten out and that we were trying to get feedback. And we did it for a window of time. And that was from February 4th to February 14th. The thinking was, let's give them plenty of time to get that filled out, allow the committee to get that information before we moved on with the next step. So we got that information, and here are the numbers, the participation numbers. Community, 2,327 folks participated. Staff members, 696, and high school students, 3,421. And the percentage of that population, and if you guys want those actual numbers, it's roughly, your community is about 77,500 folks, roughly. Your staff, about 3,800, and then students, 6,700. So if you back into those percentages, those are the numbers. So the next slide, yes. Question, do you feel there is a need to change the names of one or more facilities in Goose Creek CISD? And here are the results. The community, 16% yes, 72% no, 9% no preference. Staff, 24% yes, 61% no, no preference, 15%. High school students, 18% yes, 52% no, and 30% no preference. So that was the first question. Second question, if you do, which facility names should be changed, if you do believe they should be changed? And these are the 5 facilities. Your report has all 11. This particular slide we gave you the top 5. And you'll see the community indicated Lee, Sterling, Smith, Austin, and Bowie. And you could see those actual numbers and the percentages per facility. The staff, Lee, Sterling, Austin, Smith, and Bowie, and there are the numbers. And I guess you could see which ones stand out the most in terms of the actual numbers for those that do think there should be a change. Now, with regard to the students, they were a little different. Lee, Sterling were the same, but then Horace, Goose Creek Memorial, and Austin Elementary. And there are the numbers there with regard to the numbers per facility. So I believe in all three, the consistent ones were Lee, Sterling, and Austin, I believe. Those were the three of the top 5 for the 3 groups, the community, the staff, and the students. Okay, number 3 on the survey. What is the primary reason the facility names should be changed? And we gave them 4 choices in discussion. We felt these were the 4 reasons that had been talked about, so these were the 4 that we gave them. And you'll see that for the community staff and high school students, in terms of those that did want to change, why did they want to change? What was the primary reason? That primary reason was, I believe the school name is offensive. That was their primary. And then it has a secondary reason. A better name is more reflective of my current values, and that's at the community staff and high school level. Then the next question on the survey, number 4, what is the primary reason the facility name should not be changed? So, don't want to change it, why don't you want to change it? And these were the 4 bullet point answers that we gave them that we felt in the discussions were the ones that they should choose from. And you'll see that the same answer for community staff and high school students was the top answer, and I believe changing the name would result in a loss of tradition. A little different on the second one with regard to the students, have no other reasons, but the other community and staff felt that the cost would be too high if they were to change it. So. Now, hoping that this information, gave the committee some perspective on some of the ideas of those 3 groups, and we're hoping that you guys will take that into consideration as well, just to be aware of it. The report, and I know that your staff did a great job of putting all this together, so there's other charts and there's more detail in that. Number 5, which of the following do you consider meaningful regarding your school experience, spirit, or pride, to try to get a sense of what's important to you as a community member, staff member, or high school student? What's important to you? What are the things that you want to express are the main reasons? And we asked them to check all that applied, and these are the ones that we gave them. And here are the results. So the community, and this is a really good thing you should all take out from this. The community staff and students all felt that the number one thing, which is good, supportive faculty and staff. That was consistent, which is I think shows that your team, your people, your teachers are doing some good stuff here. So that's really neat. And then you'll see the community did also. Top one was school name, co-curricular, extracurricular activities, staff, co-curricular, extracurricular activities, and then peer relationships. And that was the same with students, co-curricular, extracurricular activities, and peer relationships. So this is just more additional information to hopefully give you guys some perspective on what they believe is important. Then the 6th one was it was an open-ended question, and the responses are in your material, and we gave them the opportunity to express themselves in terms of, do you have any additional comments that you would like to provide about facility names in Goose Creek CISD? And it was a lot, so we're not going to pull any of them out, but they're provided to you guys to review and to consider. So we'll keep going.
I guess real quick, I am going to pull one specific one out that was made. I spent a lot of time reviewing these comments, and students have asked that you bring back strawberry milk. So, throwing that one out there. If you guys can make it happen, it will be appreciated. So the last thing that the committee did is at our 5th meeting, we had committee presentations. We had 4 presentations provided by committee members who volunteered to be spokespersons. In total, the presentations addressed renaming or not renaming 9 facilities. The first presentation was the case for renaming the Green Center. The second presentation was a case for renaming Alamo Elementary, Austin Elementary, Bowie, Crockett, Smith, and Travis. The third presentation was a case for renaming Sterling High School and Lee High School. And the fourth presentation was a case for not renaming Alamo, Austin, Bowie, Crockett, Smith, Travis, Sterling, or Lee. Banuelos and San Jacinto Elementary did not receive presentations. There were no spokespersons, and committee members did not submit anything for either facility in writing. All of these presentations are available for you in the binder. The only one that's not there is the case for renaming the Green Center. I made that case. It was in about 30 seconds, and it's just because it's a duplicate facility that we are now going to be using for our junior high number 6. So, after the presentations were made, we asked committee members to vote on each individual facility. We used a 5-point Likert scale to reflect the complexity and the varying degrees of feeling that people might have about each individual facility, and to show that it is a complex issue that needs to be weighed very carefully. So as opposed to a yes or no. One of the things that was mentioned was that this boiled down to numbers. I want to say that it did not just boil down to numbers. We did have to use numbers to come up with a recommendation, but each of these presentations had a lot of, there were emotions, throughout the whole committee process. There were facts presented, there were various opinions presented, and at the end of the day, we have to make a recommendation, and to do that, we had to have data to make the recommendation. So on our 5-point scale, we averaged out the numbers, and here we have them sorted based on what the committee felt from least or most like, or the most recommended change to the least recommended. So you can see the Green Center got a score of 4.25 out of 5, indicating that it's a strong recommendation from the committee to rename that facility, all the way down to Banuelos with a 1.56, indicating that the committee felt like that name should be kept. Then you see in the middle we have Lee, Crockett, Sterling, Bowie, Asheville, Smith, Travis, Austin, Alamo, and San Jacinto. And the different bars on here indicate the different votes on the 5-point scale, with the light blue representing strongly agree that the facility should be renamed, all the way to the purple being strongly against renaming the facility. This is effectively the same chart, however, we've combined the agree and disagree, the strongly and not strongly, just to reflect agree or disagree. So our fifth outcome, our proposed recommendation to the board, based on the committee votes, the committee provided data for the school board to consider as they make determinations for future board policy, CW local, and facility names. Our committee understood throughout the process that we are not a decision-making committee. The committee is providing recommendations to the school board, and the school board will ultimately be responsible for all decisions related to facility policy, naming, and renaming. So with that in mind, the committee is recommending that the school board take action to revise school board policy based on the criteria identified in outcome number 3. That is that GCCISD policy should allow for facilities to be named after geographic areas, landmarks, or physical attributes. Policy should allow for facilities to be named after the instructional focus or aspirations of the school. GCCISD policy should include the following: that the individual's principal legacy, the key activity, advocacy, or accomplishment for which the individual is most known, aligns with or reflects the district's mission, vision, and core values and beliefs. That's an item straight out of the Yale recommendations. GCCISD policy should include the following: school facility names should consider the diverse community that they serve. GCCISD policy should include the following: the name must not already be in use by another district or facility. And based on the voting results, the committee recommends that the Green Center be renamed because this name was selected for the 6th junior school that is currently being built. These are all of our committee members. I'd like to take a moment to thank every committee member for their time and efforts. This was a long process over the course of many months, and many of these committee members put in countless hours to make this happen, along with the district staff, which we're incredibly grateful for providing this opportunity. Questions?
I've got one question. First of all, thank you so much for all the time that you guys all spent on compiling this behemoth that I have in my lap. Not to mention the amount of time that the committee members devoted and spent to go through and put all the work into this. One question I have is on, what is this last tab? Reference documents under the committee parameters. Could you explain the parameters here? Specifically, I'm just curious what the Board of Trustees action bullet means, and then the agreed upon ground rules and charter. Is the agreed upon charter and ground rules also in this?
Yeah, Mr. Carter. Get my mask off.
It's just really big. If it's in here, I'd love to.
Well, this is the charter, and so
okay.
So when it's referring to the agreed upon ground rules and charter, this is the charter. The ground rules were established at the first meeting, and they were presented each meeting. And so in the presentations, if you'll look at the PowerPoint slides, I think it's the second or third slide of each presentation. Talks about the ground rules or the rules of engagement with primarily with civil discourse. And I think you had one more question. The Board of Trustees action, I believe that's referring to the action that was made on September 9th, where the school board asked to form a committee to investigate facility names.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Bollinger, while you have your mask off, could you point out in here, I know there was some discussion about how the committee was formed, and I know we didn't all agree exactly on how big or small or whatever it should be.
Sure.
We came to a consensus, so could you read to us from here, because I've been looking for it and I can't find it, what the requirements were for individuals to apply to be on this committee?
Yes. Okay, so it's a selection of participants in the charter. It says membership will be selected from the interested and qualifying individuals by the Board of Trustees, not exceed 42 members. It goes through if more than 42 individuals apply. I believe we had about 110 apply to be on the committee. Each board member will submit to the Office of the Superintendent 5 names from their district and then 1 at-large member. It goes on to say that in addition to the previously mentioned membership criteria, the following may also be considered but not required. The citizen must be a local business organization, Goose Creek staff member, currently has a child in the school district, or an alumni. So just the point of that suggestion was just that someone was invested in the community to be on the committee.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for our panel at this time?
No questions. Just echo what Mr. Cotter said. I just thank the committee for all their hard work and all their time they spent assisting with this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Our next presentation will be the 2021-2022 budget briefing by CFO Bridget Clark. Ms. Clark, will you be bringing any of your team members with you? I see Ms. Renee Woodruff. Anyone else? Okay.
Director of Finance.
Welcome.
This time it's for real.
Okay. That's what we were just discussing.
Yes. So good evening.
Did anyone tell you about the trophy?
No.
I only think it's fair. The trophy.
Okay.
There is a trophy for longest report.
Uh-oh.
You don't want it.
I'm sure I'll win some trophies before it's all over for sure. So I'd just like to thank you for allowing me to present tonight as we move into the budget season. I came just in time, right? I didn't want to miss out on budget. So thank you for having me. And with that, I will jump right into our budget briefing for tonight. So on the agenda, we're going to be discussing the legislative update, a little bit of a financial risk assessment, just some items to be mindful of as we move through the process, budget goals and assumptions we used, some primary budget drivers, budget expenditure reduction options, and then just a preliminary budget summary as to where we are right now. And then we'll talk about the budget calendar. So firstly, we are in the midst of the 87th legislature, and it goes on until May 31st, which is the last day in May. So if you recall from the last session, they made a lot of changes that very last Memorial Day weekend. So, it's not over until it's over, so you have to keep your eye on what's coming forth and what's being agreed upon that very last weekend. So they are required by statute to pass a budget. That is the one thing that they must do. So that is definitely something they have to do, whether they have to call a special session or not. Right now, both state houses, the Senate and the House, both have proposed budgets of about $7 billion over budget. So they're just in the preliminary process right now. So that's just like their first go at it. And they're going to have to go through conferencing and all of that to reconcile those overages. Some items of public education interest for us is that the legislature honor House Bill 3 and the promise that they made to students and to school districts to continue that funding and keep it whole. We also want to preserve our fund balance and not have to use that to make up any shortfalls. The board and the administration has been very responsible and building fund balance for times such as we're in right now, and it just would be unfair to punish those districts who were able to be very responsible with their financial decisions. And then another bill that doesn't directly affect general fund as much, but it is a House Bill 1556. It does pertain to 313s, our Chapter 313 agreements. And what the proposal includes is pretty much a total elimination of the revenue protection payments and the supplemental payments. And also, it takes away the district's ability to negotiate these agreements, and it brings the final decision to you so far with what we've seen for approval, but it gives you no bargaining power. It gives you no right to negotiate. And so, many districts are they would not probably engage in these agreements if those items are eliminated. So we're also waiting they're going to legislate this year for the hold harmless, which is the decreases in ADA that we've experienced, that all school districts across the state have experienced as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. So we're keeping an eye on all of those things. I have a couple of articles in your binders as well that you could take a look at, but we're really about to truly kick off the legislative session with the first meeting of the House Public Education Committee meeting tomorrow morning at 8:00 a.m. And I think they're going to continue that time slot for the Public Education, House Public Education Committee. So just be mindful of that. So we'll keep our eye on what transpires during those meetings. Some good news that could be shared, I suppose, would be the $5.47 billion in savings that the state has recognized and that is a result of higher than expected property values, recapture, and then the federal funding for the coronavirus pandemic. So those are some good things, but again, there are quite a few other things that we could be concerned about. So take a look at those, and we will try to keep you all informed as we move through this process. So first of all, the financial risk assessment, this isn't an alarm bell or anything. It's just to kind of be mindful of, when we make our decisions, they're not always, they always have, somewhat of a risk to them. We don't make our financial decisions in a vacuum, but we make the best and most informed decisions we can. So some of the legislative risks that we could find ourselves having to face would be any change to the basic allotment. We don't anticipate this, but that would have wide-reaching effects across the state. Any revenue formula changes, of course, any forced fund balance usage, and then, of course, the hold harmless discontinuation if they were to discontinue that. And the commissioner so far is being non-committal on that item. And so we're still waiting for guidance on that. We are showing, as all districts across the state, hopefully temporary decreases in our ADA. So if that were to become permanent for some reason, we would experience decreases in revenue. Then the recurrent expenditures and deficit budget potential risks, we certainly don't want to affect our bond ratings in any way. So the bond ratings agencies like to see us be able to pay our recurring expenditures with our recurring revenues, not one-time revenues, which you all have been very responsible in doing, and moving some of those, 313 related revenues and that sort of thing to capital projects, which was a very smart move because some of that money could go away, especially with what they're proposing with that House Bill 1556. So we're just keeping an eye on that. And then, of course, property values, we don't know how much they're going to decrease as a result of the pandemic. And then, of course, the continuation of the coronavirus and the multiple variants we're facing. And then, of course, they moved hurricane season up to May 15th, so we have that on the horizon. So just things to keep, in the back of your mind, and I'm sure most of you all are thinking of these things as we move through this process. So some of the goals and assumptions that we factored in for tonight's briefing are, my job would be to propose a balanced operating budget to you all, if at all possible. And of course, to maintain the campus budgets, those are based on enrollment, and that formula would not change. And also to maintain programs at their statutory spending levels and beyond, which, that's the state comp ed, that's the CTE, all of the special programs and special POPs that we serve. And then, of course, we're going to explore employee compensation package and what we can offer there. And then some of the assumptions we used are, and this is just, very preliminary, but we're hoping for an increase in ADA of 1%. And we are also exploring the compensation package, as I mentioned before. We are proposing the department budget cuts of 5% in order to bring costs down, and definitely as a first step, and not to affect, classrooms and campuses. We are assuming flat property values. Right now, we don't know. We don't get preliminary until the end of April. And then we also have to factor in the new positions for the new facilities and the operating costs for those facilities. And we're assuming no legislative changes to revenues because we don't know that yet. And then we're assuming no unfunded mandates. So we're crossing our fingers on that. And just to recap the primary budget drivers, ADA that is your main driver for revenue. So that is your recurring revenue, and that is your entitlement. Then, of course, property values to a lesser degree with the maintenance and operation and general fund side, and then the peripheral one-time, often temporary revenues. And then expenditures, 81% of your budget plus, or 81% this year is payroll. So until you have those two items really nailed down, it's really difficult to have a final budget. And so, just to put it into perspective, like if you're off by just 1% on a $250 million budget, that's $2.5 million just to be off by 1% on your revenue projection. So the numbers can get large fast. So let's move to the next slide. So some of the expenditure reduction options that I talked about the 5% decrease in department budgets. I mentioned that excludes the campus budget, special POPs, and any contractual obligations that we have, like our copiers, and then of course appraisal district payments and that sort of thing. Those are required, and those must be factored in. And next, we have the department budget mandatory cost increases. That's going to be your utility costs, copiers, campus operating costs, the insurance, and then other maintenance and operation costs, and wellness center as well. And then you get to this very preliminary. We're kind of at the same stage that the state houses are. We're just kind of looking at very preliminary numbers right now. And the items in red here are, assumptions that we have factored in and items that we just want placeholders for. Some of them, like the new campus positions, have to be determined still. So we're still working. And right now you see that we're showing a little over $2 million deficit budget, but that doesn't mean that we can't get there. It just means we have to sharpen our pencil and work a little harder to try to close that gap. But this is just kind of like a preliminary overview of where we are at this moment as of March 1st with the best information that we have to share with you. So then to look at the budget calendar, the next item that we have that would be of interest, certainly, would be the agenda item for April 5th, and that includes the board budget workshop, which is slated to start at 5 o'clock from 5 to 6. So hopefully by then we'll have definitely some more information from our legislature and be able to refine our revenues and expenditures a little more for you. And then we have 2 more workshops. And the last one is as needed, but certainly the May 17th one, and then June 7th if needed. So we have those 2 on the calendar. And with that, I would entertain any questions that you have.
I just have a quick question on the compensation package estimate cost of $3.7 million.
Correct.
Is that just a placeholder? Do you have things in mind, or is that something that's going to develop for the next workshop?
It will be. We'll get into that. We are actually having a meeting with TASB this week, and then it's just a placeholder.
Okay.
And so it's a very rough estimate at this point. We have quite a bit of work to do behind the scenes with planning and developing those final numbers, but just to put it out there so we don't, we want to be mindful because that's a large amount that we want to make sure that that's there. So we, it may need to be massaged as we move forward through the process. But certainly, it probably will change, but it is just a placeholder.
Okay. One of the historical rules we've used is about $1 million per percentage. So that's what that represents.
It's a little bit more. Yeah, it's a little bit more than that. But yeah, that's probably around 2. Yeah. So, but
I had
that's
a question about the estimated payroll numbers. I know you threw up there 81% of budget is typically it is in fact what our payroll was, right? Okay. So, and I was just looking on here. And I'm not great at math, y'all, but estimated payroll 2021. So I guess that's current year budget. That's a little more than 81% of the total revenues. So is there some other revenue in that?
What I was looking at on the 81%, I just took the adopted budget and
we may have amended that a time or two.
Yes. Yes. And so when I just did a quick calculation, it came out to be about 198.5 million for payroll. So on a just for round numbers, $250 million budget, if you're looking at payroll, it's going to be at least 198.5 million. And that's for this year. And then
on here it says 201.337 million.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
That includes the one-time payment.
Okay.
Received in December.
Okay.
Oh, yes, sorry.
No problem. I'm just
good question.
I'm not good at math. I'm just trying to understand here. No. So
yes.
All right. And so then, of course, I see on here too where we're talking about our new campuses coming online. We'll have to accommodate for new positions and all, and that's to be determined. But we know for a fact that we'll have the junior high online in August, and then possibly online
January, the mid-year
next year. So all of those to be
Now, the good news
determined.
is one of the campuses is just transferring current staff over, right? So there's no additional, one of the new campuses.
San Jacinto, yes,
Right.
correct. I'm talking, I meant new. San Jacinto's not new, it's been here.
And with
They count.
even with the middle school, the added staff is administrative only.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, teachers transfer from within the district.
From within the district, so basically it's kind of by attrition.
Yes.
Because I do also notice on here that we had a decrease on our, you have it on there for the proposed 5% department reductions. What do those look like? Department reductions.
Those are for administrative departments like finance, like
transportation.
We're cutting your budget?
Yes.
So director's budgets versus the campus budgets.
Yes.
Are what we're looking at first and foremost.
Okay.
And one of the things noted on there was 1% growth in ADA. What that basically is doing is going back to where we were pre-COVID. You know, you're averaging about 1% growth a year over 5 years. That's what we would anticipate, not only recapturing the kids that we've lost to COVID, but with the community building houses left and right, we feel like we'll get back on the 1% annual track. But again, as she very clearly pointed out, that's an estimation, and at this point in time, we are tracking demographics with the city to see how many homes are being sold and those sorts of things. But we hope as the budget presentation moves forward, we'll have more accurate information for you as a board.
Yeah, I think you just answered my question, but and since I took math lessons from Miss Woods, I know we're assuming that we're going to get our missing children back plus 1%.
That's what we're hoping for. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. Just to put that into perspective, if we were down the 730 students and that was permanent, and we're thinking it's not going to be, but if it were, it would be about $4.5 million that the revenue would have to be reduced.
And she made a reference to the Commissioner of Education had made a statement called hold harmless for the fall semester. He is holding out on whether or not to qualify the spring semester as hold harmless. And hold harmless essentially means for budgeting purposes, he will allow us to count last year's number of students versus this year's number of students for budgeting revenue from ADA.
So that was actually one question that I had on here also, that we don't have assurances right now for this spring.
We do not.
As of right now, for this spring on hold harmless.
We do believe that is likely to happen. We believe that it's being held up for political purposes at this point in time. I mean, just waiting is a standard operating procedure at this point in time. But we believe there's not a reason not to.
True, but yeah. So call your representatives.
They have the funds.
So my last question, which is kind of political in that arena as well, is just curiosity, and I don't know if you can tell me or if it's in the binder book, an article to read, but why HB 1556? Who would benefit from that? I mean, seriously, is there somebody that would benefit from passing that?
So currently,
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, yes,
Okay.
the school districts would definitely not benefit from that. But there is a school of thought that it would probably benefit industry. So, because they wouldn't have to be forced into paying those revenue protection payments, and it would just be non-existent. So, yeah.
But then we could smack them with some really big property taxes right up front, right? Maybe, maybe not. No, they'll find a way out of that. Okay.
That's certainly something to think about.
All right. Well, that was my lessons for the day. Thank you.
Thank you. More questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. O'Brien, that concludes your superintendent's reports.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. We will move on to agenda item number 7, our action items. A, consideration of consent agenda. Back to you, Dr. O'Brien.
At this point in time, administration would recommend that the board accept the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, donation from Victoria Walker, elementary PTO. Number 2, 3 instructional waivers as a result of our inclement weather. Number 3, resolution for voting equipment to be used for the May 1st, 2021 uniform election. Number 4, certificate of unopposed candidate and order canceling election for trustee in position District 4. Number 4, declaring results of election for trustee in District 4 in accordance with Section 2.053 of the Texas Election Code. Number 5, optional alternative medical insurance plan through TSHBP, the Texas School Health Benefits Plan, to all full-time eligible employees with a new TPA provider, FBS, Financial Benefit Services for medical and voluntary benefits. Number 6, award of RFP for grease trap maintenance services. And number 7, tax refunds. Administration would recommend approval of consent agenda at this time. Be glad to answer any questions as well.
Could we pull number 4 for a separate vote?
Yes, sir. We'll be glad to pull number 4.
I have a quick question on number 5.
Yes, sir.
So this is going back to the District of Innovation. So is the amended District of Innovation plan coming back to the board for approval?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We will be bringing that. Ms. Myers is here. She's the one that presented this previously. And once again, it's an optional plan that employees we're trying to provide our employees more benefits and more choices to direct their costs associated with medical care. And you're correct, Mr. Poppy, as a matter, we will bring it back as an amendment to the District of Innovation plan as previously presented to the board for approval and approved by the board.
All right, that answers my question.
So we don't need to pull it from the consent. We can go ahead with number 5 tonight and then.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't have the cart before the horse.
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
No, sir.
Okay, any other questions or pulls or comments on any of the items? No? So at this time, I will be looking for a motion on 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7.
A move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Clem and a second from Mr. Laredo to approve items A, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7 on the consent agenda. No more questions or comments at this time. Please raise your hand if you say aye.
Aye.
Approve. None opposed, none abstaining. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, number 4, we pulled it. Do we need to discuss it, Mr. Clem, or did you just want to vote separately?
I just
okay.
intend to vote differently.
All right, so at this time, I will take a motion to approve action item A4.
I'll move to approve.
I second.
I have a motion from Mrs. Guy and a second from Mr. Poppy to approve the action item A4. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Mr. Sampson, did you vote or no? Did you? Oh, okay. Well, that's your left hand. I couldn't see it. I'm sorry. Your screen blocked. And Mr. Cotter? Okay, so any opposed? Any abstaining? So we have 6, 4, 0 opposed, and 1 abstention. Motion passes. All right, that concludes 7A action items. Now moving to 7B, future board agenda items, board trainings, and board meetings.
Just to note that we do have budget workshops in the future. The calendar was just presented in the previous presentation, and just a reminder you can publicly discuss now if the calendar for the budget workshop is appropriate and/or we need to make adjustments now publicly.
Yeah, we'll have to go back to that. See here. Our next budget workshop. April 5th is the next board workshop with the budget from 5 to 6 p.m. Is that a, what, that's a...
Just placed on a calendar early on.
Yeah.
And,
do we know day of the week for that? April. It is a Monday. All right, preceding our next regular board meeting, April 5th. If we need to adjust those times or dates, now would be the time to do it. Yeah, April 5th, so it would be prior to the board meeting at 6:30 from 5 to 6 p.m. Legislative review, operating expenditures, and compensation plan options. 5 to 6 p.m., good with everyone.
Getting down to a little bit more of the details, trying to provide the board with more information.
Okay, so hearing no grumbling, that works, it sounds like. And then, of course, there's the May 17th, it looks like, from 5 to 6 p.m., June 7th from 5 to 6 p.m., and we can revisit those as they come a little closer. Okay, also, we do have our winter governance online, I believe, this week, beginning Wednesday. Is that correct, Ms. Garcia?
Yes, ma'am.
Please check your emails and log in as able.
What was the second budget?
May 17th.
Okay.
5 o'clock.
May 17th.
May 17th at 5 p.m. Okay, so March 3 through 6, campus developments. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting is not May 15th, correct?
Correct. Not until
I mean,
April
March,
date.
March. We're still in March. I want summer to get here bad. All right, March, not March 15th. It will not be until April 5th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's many weeks from now, so.
The month. So we hope the legislature will be winding down. We'll have more information. Of course, nothing's final until Sendai, which is on the 31st, as Ms. Clark said.
So I would assume if there's any pressing district business between now and then, we would have to call a special board meeting.
We could.
If necessary.
If we need to, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so moving on from item 7B to 7C, closed meeting. At this time, the board will recess into closed meeting. According to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.071, 072, 073, 074, 075, 076, 082, 083, 084, and 087. No action will be taken by the board while we are in closed session. The time is 8:34 p.m., March 1st, 2021. Recess. And I don't have in my computer. Oh, it's to silence everyone? The time is now 9:27 p.m. Board will reconvene. No action was taken while we were in closed session. March 1st, 2021. Moving on the agenda from closed meeting to D, reconvene. E, consideration of personnel. Dr. O'Brien?
Yes, Madam President, you've heard me say many times that teachers are the backbone of our organization. Occasionally, there are teachers that become the foundation of a particular campus. And tonight, we present to you 2 teachers that have become a foundational support of Goose Creek Memorial High School. Present to you Miss Sally Black, who has served the district 44 years, and Miss Debbie Hempsel, who has served Goose Creek Memorial High School the entire 13 years of its existence, and as well as other teachers, Michael Hinges, Gage Kell, and Rachel Kell. Just wanted to bring special attention to those retirees who have served our district so well for so long.
I would move that we reluctantly accept their resignations.
And retirements.
And retirements.
I second.
I have a motion from Mr. Clem to be reluctant and a second from Mr. Coffey. Are there any questions, comments? None being seen. All in favor, please raise your right hand or say aye. All in favor, showing none opposed and none abstaining. Motion regretfully, is that what it was? It was reluctantly passes. All right, that concludes personnel, leaving us one more item, number 8, adjournment.
Move for approval.
9:29 p.m. All in favor?
Can we have a discussion about that first?
Go right ahead.
You would. The one item. 9:29 p.m. Thank you.